Rarely in Formula One do you find someone who's worked as both a team principal and a promoter. They are two completely different jobs and give two completely different perspectives on the sport. Yet that's exactly what Eric Boullier, my guest this week, has done. So welcome to Beyond the Grid with me, Tom Clarkson, for a show that sheds light on both sides of the F1 fence. The competitors who spend the money and the promoters who help to bring it in. Now, many of you will remember Eric as team principal of Renault and Lotus, before he then became the racing director of McLaren. He resigned from that role in 2018 and switched camps to Paul Ricard, where he's now managing director of the French Grand Prix. And that's not all. There are even more strings to Eric's bow because he started out in motorsport as an engineer and then went into driver management, so you could say he's done it all. And as you can imagine, there was lots to discuss when we caught up recently. Of course, we talked about many of the drivers he's worked with, including 3 world champions, Kimi Raikkonen, Jenson Button, and Fernando Alonso. But there's also the nuances of the teams he's worked for and the challenges they've faced. He's fascinating about all of them. So sit back and enjoy hearing from someone whose experience of Formula One is both wide-ranging and colourful. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Eric, it's lovely to have you on the show. First up, how are you? Where are you? Where am I speaking to you?
Well, I'm very well, thank you. And it's good to see you and good to hear from you guys. And I'm in Paris currently.
So at the offices of the French Grand Prix, no doubt.
Yes, we have 2 offices, one in Paris and one at the circuit Paul Ricard. So I'm commuting between both most of the time.
Tell us about the French Grand Prix, because there's been no race in 2020. Did you discuss with Formula One about the prospect of a race with no fans this year?
Well, we have been obviously in touch with Formula One as early as February and March, and we have discussed with them any kind of scenarios possible, up to the point where when the first pandemic came and lockdown was put in place by governments, we had to discuss and face, obviously, some of the decision. First was to, at some stage, was to move the date forward, to reschedule the Grand Prix, and obviously to consider having a Grand Prix behind closed doors. Between all these scenarios, it was impossible for us to host a Grand Prix because we couldn't find a date fitting the French Riviera schedule. We couldn't find a date fitting the schedule of the Circuit Paul Ricard as well. And anyways, the sanitary conditions was not at the right place at that moment, so we had to take the difficult decision to cancel.
But what's the prospects for next year, 21?
Well, 21, you see, we are discussing back to, let's say, normal conditions in an ideal world. Even if, to be honest, the more we go, the further we go into the year this year, we understand the sanitary condition might not be back to normal next year, or at least in the first months of 2021. So we are considering, again, few scenarios, but we definitely want to host the Grand Prix next year.
Would you consider hosting the race behind closed doors next year?
To be honest, it's a difficult decision because, as you know, the Grand Prix model is always involving somewhere some political parts. There is obviously a strategy which is to bring the fans around the track and the event. So if you go for behind closed door, obviously it's a different business model. It's a lot of discussion with F1 as well, because obviously this is not the same model. So you have to redefine everything.
God, I really have missed my trip to the French Riviera this year, Eric. We need to get it back on the calendar.
we are, and we will be. I guess F1 should announce soon the new next year calendar, and you will see we are part of it, obviously. And actually, we have a couple of good news to add as well to the event we want to make next year.
Oh, go on, pray tell us now.
No, I can't tell you now. I'm sorry, even if it's beyond the grid, I can't tell you everything. You have to wait a little bit.
Eric, here's the thing. It's really interesting hearing you talk about life as a promoter, because there aren't many people in the world who have been both promoter and team principal, which of course you have. Tell us about the unique challenges of each role?
It's two different worlds, even if it's related to racing and to in some way adrenaline. If you're a team principal of a team, it's a lifestyle more than anything else. You have a race every 2 weeks. You have to manage two companies, one company to build Formula One and one company to race Formula One. And they both have their own codes. They both have their own rules, if I may say this, and you're part of this, tornado, I would say, which start early February and then stop only at the end of the year, and it's an exciting and sporting challenge every year where you try to compete, every weekend to find the last tenths of performance out of both your cars and your team to make sure, you can win a championship. Being a promoter, it's also a challenge because you have obviously to build what is a small company running all the year, roughly 20%. But during the week of the Grand Prix, we are 1,500 people. So it's a large organization and a large event organization to manage. You still have to deliver a nice product for the fans, for the TV fans, TV spectators. Make sure, obviously, you can fit everybody all together between the teams, FOM, FIA, and the fans, of course. And obviously, it's a challenge, and you have also your competitors, which are the other Grand Prix. So you always want to compare yourself with the other one and try to be better and to make it a better show.
How much do you miss the stopwatch?
It's been a stopwatch of my life. So, at some stage as well, you want to do something else in your life. So it was a good experience in my life. Firstly, I've been lucky enough to live this life as a team principal, not only in Formula One, also in Formula 2, Formula 3. And now I've got all the challenges and enjoy a different life.
Now, another man who is about to get experience from both sides of the fence is Stefano Domenicali, because, of course, you were team principals together when he was the boss of Ferrari, and now he is the new president and CEO of Formula One. First of all, do you think Stefano is a good appointment?
I would say definitely one of the best, if not the best appointment possible, yeah.
And what do you think should be top of Stefano's job list when he arrives in Formula One in January?
Well, I don't know because I'm not in his shoes first and I have not applied for his job. So it's going to be his own challenge, obviously. He has enough experience now. I mean, he's been running every kind of job in Ferrari to the top one, been successful at Lamborghini as a proper entrepreneur. So obviously, running Formula One or running a team is very different. So I think the first thing to not do would be to listen to the team first and consider the business, F1 as a sports business first and focus on that.
Well, I think job number one is to ensure we all go to the French Riviera in about July next year, Stefano.
Yeah, that I'm going to make sure, don't worry.
While we're talking all things French, can we talk about Renault and your time as team principal there? And first up, can you explain how you made the jump from Gravity, the driver management company that you ran, to Renault to become the team principal?
Well, after 10 years running various championship and teams, as you said, I decided to focus on developing drivers and helping drivers to reach what they wanted to dream for. It appears that the owners of Gravity also bought Renault F1, and they were looking for somebody new, fresh, to manage the team. And because I had some experience in the 24 of Le Mans or Formula 2 and other categories, my name came up at some stage. And for them, it was easy, obviously, to ask me what to do because I was already working for them. So that was obviously a great opportunity and obviously a lot of trust, from Gerard Lopez and Eric Lux at these days to put me there. But they supported me well, and it went relatively well.
It did indeed. Well, look, tell me about, I think 2013 was the best car you had, wasn't it? Do you think, in hindsight, that car was good enough to win the title that year?
If we have to reflect back at that year, could have been better, definitely. I think as an organization, we were still too young and not experienced enough compared with McLaren or Red Bull first. At that time, it was Red Bull's, obviously, the reference as a team. So we could have done better. I think you have to put everything in place as well. I mean, there is a race on track and there is also a race every weekend between the teams to develop the car. Even if we did well with what we had, We didn't have by far the same level of budget and commitment or capacity of manufacturing parts as Red Bull had at that time. And I think every weekend we were improving, but they were improving at least as good as we were. And I don't think the car was, in these conditions, the car was let's say, a championship contender.
How difficult did things get? Because I think it was Spa, we turned up and the bailiffs were there. I think to run a team where you're clearly lacking budget compared to the likes of Red Bull anyway, how desperate did things get?
It doesn't get desperate, you just do with what you have, because the danger actually is to go desperate and to overspend, and then you compromise your following year. And in the same time, you need to keep your head cool, because by April and May, you already start to switch your resources on the following year car. So it's always a balance between how far you want to develop the current car, how early you want to start the next year car. And obviously, there is a budget constraint, even if, like you said, we always stretch a little bit and take sometimes some risk, but it's not being desperate. It's obviously can be frustrating sometimes if you work hard, your guys work hard, they're manufacturing 24/7 just to bring the parts, at the last minute of the track, and it works, but then you see Red Bull turning up with 6 front wing and we have only one, so you're like, well, okay, we did our best at least.
More from Eric in just a moment, but first I have a special offer I want to share with you. HelloFresh can help you avoid those supermarket queues by providing all the fresh ingredients you need to cook delicious dinners from scratch without the added stress. With more than 30 recipes to choose from each week, there's something for everyone to enjoy, and they cater for every lifestyle. And getting started couldn't be simpler. Just log on to their app and start building your mouth-watering menu. Their flexible delivery options mean you can pick a time of day that suits you, and their flexible subscription means you can change, pause, or cancel your deliveries whenever you need to. All meals come with pre-portioned ingredients, so there's no extra food waste, and you'll get step-by-step instructions, which are easy to follow. I tried the chicken, bacon, red wine juice, and mushroom stew. That's quite a tongue twister, and it was just wonderful. Superb value for money as well, when you consider that their recipes start from just £3.44 per person. Get 50% off your first HelloFresh box and 35% off the next 3 by going to hellofresh.co.uk and use the code Formula1, and that's the number 1, Formula1. That's hellofresh.co.uk, code Formula1. Now look, tell us what it was like to work with Kimi Raikkonen. Genius in many ways, but is he quite a frustrating driver to manage?
No, I think they all are different. I mean, they all have their own personalities, and personally, I enjoy a lot working with Kimi. He's a genius, like you say. He's part of these special drivers. They have been world champions, so they are world champion material, like we say. Different character, and you just need to handle the personalities to get the best out of them. And I think in every sport or in every world, if you have to handle a genius, like you call it, you always have to respect some of their own rules if you want to get the best out of them.
I love the way you call it their own rules, because on Beyond the Grid last year, Kimi talked about a 2-week bender that he went on after the Bahrain Grand Prix in 2013. He reckoned he didn't stop drinking for 2 weeks between Bahrain and Spain, and then he turned up in Spain and finished on the podium.
For me, it's normal. Outside, it might look a bit weird, but obviously it's been a joke often. But actually, I think it's more true than joke that I often been driving better, doing all whatever I want between the races, than if I'm just not having fun and drinks and stuff.
How do you manage that sort of person? And do you remember that story?
Yeah, I remember very well that story. You have first to understand how are they, who are they? Sorry, I should say. What they have been doing before, what they have achieved. I've been lucky to work with 3 world champions, or 4 X1. There is a reason why they deliver the world championship. So you have to first understand their personalities, and they all have their little upsides and downsides, and it's just the way you can handle them I always give them some space if you want, and just agreed on what would be, where would be the fence, if I may say this. So you can do what you want in this space. If you get out of this space, we need to talk, but that's how I am. But it worked very well, and obviously Kimi was a special animal, if I may say this. But he was an unbelievable driver.
Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I did it.
Eric, what about Romain Grosjean? He's in the news at the minute because he's parting ways with Haas. How do you look back on Grosjean's career, and why do you think he didn't win a race?
Good question.
Do you think he's good enough to win a race on the right day?
Yeah. He's good enough. He would have actually in, I don't remember which year, but it was in Nürburgring in 2012 or 13. I don't remember. We were about in 2/3 of the race, and we knew with the tires deck, and because I remember a Marussia car broke down and starting to reverse back, and then obviously when you see the car reversing back, it's going to be a safety car. And the safety car obviously gave Red Bull the opportunity to change the tires, and then we knew we lost it, But he could have won this race, and he did enough podiums to show he has the potential to win,
Do you think he lacked consistency? If you were to say what you needed more of, Romain, if there was one thing, would it be consistency?
Definitely, if you are a world champion driver, needs to have everything in place, if I may say this. And I think Romain has the capacity to win races. He won championship in every category he's been racing before, so he has all this material. F1 is a little bit more complicated because you need to handle and to gather people around you, plus being in the right team with the right engine at the right time. But when you are at the right time, you need to make sure you can deliver, having everybody around you pushing for you. I think if you look at the years 2012 and 13, Kimi was special to make the team working for him, and he delivered more. He had more podiums, he had 2 wins, but Romain was young at that time, and I think then also characteristic, Kimi is clearly, his racecraft is just unbelievable. He has this talent, during the race to control everything. I think Romain needs to be more in control of trying to be in control, but the speed is there. And obviously he couldn't show it at that time because it was maybe too early. And then he went into a team where he had not the capacity to be on the podium, but still he did some amazing races with Haas and scored many points with them, for them.
It's lights out, away we go. And there's Lewis Hamilton slowing into the wall. Oh dear, Romain Grosjean and Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton all coming to grief at La Source here in Belgium. Safety car is coming out. That looked a particularly nasty incident.
How difficult did it get with Romain in 2012 when I'm thinking of Spa and the accident and then being rested for a race. Did you have to sit down with him and have a real tete-a-tete with him?
Yeah, of course. Of course, you had to sit down with him, and a lot of time and many times. And the thing is, it's where you put your belief and your trust, I always believe Romain had a special talent. I watched him racing from Formula Renault to Formula 2, and everybody knew. That's why he was picked up as well to be the teammate of Alonso in 2009, So not only me, a lot of people in the paddock knew his raw speed was amazing. And then how he would develop after, depend on his personality. He did the job with us because I think when we decided to have Romain and Kimi, in 2012, it was a pairing, a lot of experience, ultra-talented driver with a youngster, let's say. And the good thing is, in some way, one was showing the other one, I want to be, we had this evolution between them, which obviously was interesting to see because Kimi didn't want to be beaten by the young kid, and the young kid was doing everything he could to beat the old one. So it was, emulating, and it's also part of the success of 2012 and 2013. Both of them actually raised the team up, and push the boundaries as far as possible, to be competitive. Up to the point, if you remember, we had this Budapest, incident where Kimi got out of the pits, and trying to block Romain, and then that's it.
Difficult one for you to manage.
Yeah, no, it's a one to manage. You have two competitive persons, so it's okay. It's part of the game, and actually it's nice to have this kind of problem, to be honest.
Someone else I wanted to ask you about, Eric, is Robert Kubica. Great season with you guys in 2010, and then of course he had his terrible rally accident. First up, how good is Robert? Or how good was Robert, I think is fair to say.
You can't compare a driver with another driver. So let's say Robert had everything to be world champion one day. If he has the right team, obviously, being in the right place, but he had the talent enough to be there, to be among the greatest.
Is he the fastest Formula One driver you've worked with?
No, I will not compare any drivers. They're all different. They all have special talents. They're all fast, but you can't say one is faster than the other one.
I'm not going to let you get away with this, Eric. I'm now going to say to you, we've got Boullier Grand Prix, and you can hire 2 drivers that you've raced, that you've had on your books in your Formula One career. Which 2 guys would you hire?
So if you put if in your question, then I would say I would be rich enough to have A team, B team, and C team, so I can have 6 drivers. Okay, and then I can name you the 6 I want, of course. Yeah,
no, I'm
no,
fine. You're not going to tell me who's fastest, but can you give me 2 names? If you money, no object.
No, you have to be a. Obviously, the driver of the moment is Lewis, so you have to consider Lewis. But again, it's not only having a driver; it's how you set up and you want them to work together. And I could tell you I want these 2 drivers because they are, let's say, the 2-1 I believe are the best package, if I may say this. It's those the fastest, if you want. But you can't put. Maybe they don't work together, or maybe they are gonna create some conflict in the team because they all want the attention and obviously the support of the team, and so you can't put 2 names like this, on the paper. And you always choose depending on the market and the availability of the market. But no, Tom, I will not tell you which driver I will pick. Definitely, there will be there would be at least one which I've been working with for sure.
Back to Kubica and just that terrible rally accident. Can you remember where you were when you heard the news? And can you tell us a little bit about the aftermath of what happened next?
Yeah, I was having breakfast in London. I remember very well that day. And my phone rang 9 o'clock. It was the manager of Robert calling me, telling me there had been a drama and a big crash. And that day I had 130 calls. I spent all my day on the phone, and obviously flew straight after to Italy to see where Robert was in the hospital.
What did you find? Did you understand the gravity of the situation straight away?
Not straight away, because the news I had was obviously nobody at that time knew Robert was doing a rally, except his closest entourage, let's say. Even the manager was not, didn't know, what happened, how bad it was. And after obviously, a couple of hours, when we had access to more information from the hospital, we understood how bad it was, and actually how seriously bad it was, because he nearly died that day.
You say that no one apart from his closest entourage knew he was racing, but I'm assuming you knew he was doing the rally.
Well, at that time, we knew he was doing some testing. We didn't know he was doing that specific rally. Okay, we had a sort of agreement, if you want. But because he also wanted to live from his passion and to not be bothered being a Formula One driver, that's why his secret and the confidentiality was as much as possible kept.
What was your attitude towards him doing rallying and dangerous stuff outside of Formula One?
I know there's a lot of important matters in Formula One and in the racing and sponsorship, and I've always been favorable for them to do something else. Obviously, rally is a bit extreme compared with Formula One. I mean, it's 2 different worlds, 2 different driving style. But for me, drivers doing Formula One and doing 24 Hours of Le Mans or never been a problem for me because I think there is something to learn actually from both categories, and it makes the drivers normally better. And I know there is today with 22 races, maybe 23 next year. It's obviously more and more the driver need to be focused on and less distraction, because it's obviously the resting time and the recovering time now are more and more important in a Formula One driver life with all the jet lags and everything. So obviously it's going to be maybe less possible to do different categories in the future.
I know that Robert to this day maintains that he learned from rallying and it made him a better Formula One driver.
Yeah, obviously rally is a bit further apart, from Le Mans compared with F1, but you always learn something about tires, about grip, or in rally in case grip condition or grip change conditions, which might help a driver in some situation in F1 when the track is drying or when it starts to rain or whatever. So there's also always something for them to learn together, But if you do it it's better to do it in proper conditions. And the example of Robert was keep learning or something from rallying, in a smaller category rally. It's maybe sometimes not a good idea. It was definitely not.
Before we continue with Eric, I must mention that support for this show is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in male grooming. And Manscaped's taking over the world and is now available in all of Europe. Yes, you heard me right. If you live in the EU, you can now purchase Manscaped products. Lucky you! And just because summer's over and you might not be getting as much use out of your swimming gear, that doesn't mean you have to let your grooming regime slide as well. So if you haven't tried their premium lawnmower 3.0 electric trimmer, you've been missing out. Their third generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents, and the battery lasts up to 90 minutes. And why not give their Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer a go as well? Because those areas shouldn't be neglected either, especially if you're spending most of your time on video chats like me. Both of these items come as part of the Manscaped Performance Package, along with other quality products like their athletic boxer briefs. But don't just take my word for it. Get your manscaping routine in order with Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code GRID at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code GRID. You mentioned that you've worked with 3 world champions. We've talked about one of them, Kimi Raikkonen. Can we talk about Jenson Button now? And can I just ask, what is his greatest strength as a driver?
Jenson feedback, I would say, on top of his obviously raw speed. Okay, they all have an unbelievable speed, and I would say the way he can feel the car and his feedback and the way he manages his tires is just obviously outstanding. But it's a bit restrictive what I'm saying, because it's more than this. Again, I'm saying these guys, if they have been world champion, it's because they have many other skills. They all have the speed. They all know when to deliver and how to deliver, and gathering people around them and make it's like channeling the support and the energy of the team. For them to have everything in their hand to deliver, and that's for me, this is what these guys are capable of.
So when I mention the other world champion you've worked with, Fernando Alonso, he's got all of those attributes, understand that. But did he deserve to win more than 2 world championships?
He definitely should have and could have. And I use both verbs, okay? Obviously, I remember very well Abu Dhabi 2010, because it was our car who stopped him to be a world champion. That could have been an opportunity for them to do. There was another one later. And I think when I use the word could, it's always easy to give an opinion afterwards, But definitely at that time, they were lacking a little bit of maybe self-confidence in the team. And that maybe where Fernando could have played a role, which we expect from the driver sometimes to, appease, reassure people, and boost people around you to be self-confident and deliver even higher, better service, or to make the job better. And I know in Ferrari pressure, Italian pressure, or Italian media pressure is very high. In some ways, the only guy who can help definitely to make everything a little more quieter and more self-confident is the driver.
What did you make of Fernando's comments at McLaren about Honda? And, in a way, do you think he orchestrated his own downfall?
No, you can't say that. He's just maybe the most ultimate competitors. His life is completely centered around racing and being competitive. I think the frustration was just creating these kind of comments, and because when he joined McLaren with Honda coming back, for him was to maybe recreate a legacy, different legacy obviously, but from what Senna has been doing and Prost has been doing with McLaren Honda in these days 30 years ago. So there was a lot of expectation, I guess, and obviously not being as competitive as he would have dreamed of, was creating a lot of frustration.
Fernando, NASA is 7.5 seconds back. We must save fuel. We must target 0.
I don't want. Already I have big problems now. Driving with this and looking like amateurs. GP2 engine. GP2.
So it was frustration. There was no malice in what he was saying.
Not at all.
Just born out of,
exactly,
why can't we do this?
Yeah, exactly. I think he's as I said, he's the ultimate, competitive driver, and his life is about racing and winning.
But equally, he's not a stupid man. He's one of the most intelligent racing drivers I've ever met. So he would have known that those comments would have been picked up by the media, by other team bosses.
Yeah, of course. I'm sure he knew what he was doing, if I may use the expression. But in some way, it's all these comments, have been done after a race, after, if you remember, a lot of expectation even from himself from this race, and even if he knows what he was doing, I think typically, sometimes frustration is just, pushing you to do something, which is not what you want to say maybe, but it's part of the frustration and I think of the ambition he had, to really, really, really do well with McLaren and Honda.
Are you surprised he's coming back next year with Renault?
Not at all. I was expecting it.
Really?
Yeah, I think he went to Le Mans, he won it twice. He still chased, obviously, the Indy 500 for the Triple Crown, but he's not fixed on that, I think he still wants to deliver and to enjoy some challenges. You understand now that, obviously, the time when you're racing at the top of your game is different, but I'm sure he can surprise a lot of people still.
And when you look at the progress Renault have made this year, do you think we could see Alonso on the podium next year? I
wish, to be honest. It would be good for both Fernando and first Renault, for the hard jobs they have been doing. And you never know, obviously from one year to another year, obviously we saw them having a setback in Portugal, so there's still a few things they have to sort out in-house, and definitely with the car. But I think if they keep pushing and keep doing what they're doing, they will be regular top 3, in not so long.
Now, there's one more driver I wanted to ask you about, and that's Stoffel Van Dorn. Is he better than he was made to look alongside Alonso?
He's definitely a very good driver, okay? Very fast, and he was the way he dominated F2 and Super Formula even, it was very good for him. I think he came at the time in Formula 1 where the car was not at its best, the team not at its best, and he had a very, very solid teammate, and it's not easy to obviously deploy your wings when you have Fernando next to you.
And is Fernando quite political inside a team? Did he make life difficult for Stoffel outside of the car?
Not necessarily. He doesn't need that. He's obviously self-confident and talented enough, and every driver, obviously, as part of trying to gather people around him, he's always trying a little bit of political tricks, to get attention, but not to the point where, obviously, he's trying to disturb his teammate, let's say.
While we're talking racing drivers, Eric, how would you rate your drive in the Ford Ka at Brands Hatch last year? Your race debut, no less.
Happy with myself because I started very, 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 very fast. I would say maybe the best progression is a year. It was me. But if I was the team principal of the team, I would have fired me straight away.
Isn't Brands a great racetrack, actually?
Yeah, it is. It's a challenge, obviously.
Can you imagine a modern Formula One car going through paddock? It would be insane, wouldn't it?
Yeah, at the same time, I'm not sure I would. You always have to think about the safety as well, and it would be risky to have 20 cars these days with the level of downforce and grip they have and the speed they have now, which is amazing, and fortunately, there is some safety, procedures and protocols, and the FIA, I'm sure, would make it safe, but it would be a challenge.
Now on Beyond the Grid, we love speaking to some of the sport's biggest names about the greatest moments in Formula One history. But new stories are being written every race weekend, and you can follow every twist and turn of the season with F1's Paddock Pass podcast. F1 Paddock Pass is the place to hear the drivers when they're full of adrenaline just minutes after they've climbed from their cars. Episodes are free to listen to and come out exclusively on Spotify 3 times every race week, and you don't need a premium account to listen to them. On Thursdays, Will Buxton previews the weekend's action, getting all the drivers' views on F1's hottest topics. After qualifying on Saturday, the drivers relive the fight to be fastest. We talk to the star performers up and down the grid, the pole sitter, and look ahead to the race itself. Then on Sunday, minutes after crossing the finish line, the race winner celebrates with F1 Paddock Pass. You'll hear from them all, the surprise podium finishers, the point scorers, the happy and the heartbroken after every Grand Prix. It's your race weekend audio guide. Listen to F1 Paddock Pass for free, no need for a premium account, on Thursdays, Saturdays and Sundays every race week, only on Spotify. And follow F1 Paddock Pass for the fastest way to get every episode. So look, we've talked drivers, we've talked French Grand Prix, we've talked Renault/Lotus. Did also want to ask you about McLaren, because you were the racing director there when you were in charge of, I suppose, Fernando Alonso, Jenson Button, Stoffel Van Dorn, etc. How do you reflect on your 4 years at the team?
My biggest challenge ever, an incredible experience working with amazing and talented people, and obviously approaching Ron, Dennis, Martin Whitmarsh was obviously people which I was following since I was 14 or teenager. A great organization, maybe a bit too big these days, but actually at that time maybe lacking a little bit of flexibility, but it was my biggest challenge and maybe one of my obviously best experience. Despite the lack of result, obviously, it was frustrating to work so hard and to never been able to put everything together at the right time. But some of the projects we were running was too young or not mature enough. And I think a little bit of more time would have definitely paid off, but it is what it is, but definitely I gave it all for 4 years, and it was, yes, an amazing experience.
You mentioned Ron Dennis. It was Ron who asked you to go to the team, wasn't it?
Yes. Let's say I signed my contract with Ron, let's say, just put it this way. And there was a few other people involved in the discussion, but Ron was the one who made me sign my contract, yes.
What was it like to work with Ron? Could you see the strengths that had made him the success story and McLaren the success story that they turned out to be?
Well, straight away. Obviously, when you meet the man, he's obviously transpiring, we say this in French, maybe it doesn't work in English, I'm sorry, but he makes you feel, his intensity and his competitiveness, and then you realize why McLaren became what it is today, straight away.
Is there a story of him showing you around the factory? And did he take 3 hours to show you around the factory?
Yeah, I was impressed, to be honest. And he asked me to come the day before I was supposed to start on the Sunday. I arrived thinking I had to be dressed like McLaren style, with a tie and a suit. And he said to me, "No, we don't wear suit on Sunday." I said, "No, we don't wear tie on Sunday, sorry." And he took 3 hours of his time to show me everything, and I think you could feel his pride, obviously, to have achieved this kind of, obviously, it's just amazing headquarters. And obviously all the story of McLaren through the boulevard, so which is quite something, and also the gallery when you can see all the trophies and everything. So, and his passion for technology as well, which he wanted to share.
And how aware were you of the sort of political environment that was created there that ended up with Ron leaving?
Well, I was just, obviously you do your job. You're in contact with most of the people, so you hear some stories. You're not obviously part of the full-time boardroom, so you don't know everything else, or you don't know everything. But clearly, you can sense when something is going wrong, so you can start to ask. There is some rumors being fueled by him and her and whatever. But then, you just follow as much as you can. But it was a little bit far from my world.
And why do you think it didn't work out with Honda? Why didn't McLaren give Honda more time?
There is many reasons, to be honest, and I can't come back on it now. It's not my duty. You should ask people in place there. I think, let's say the timing wasn't maybe the right one, and it created some frustration and many reasons. I've been behind. Some of them I know. Some of them, obviously, I can say or can't say, but it's not up to me to say what happened or what happened.
It seems to me your time at McLaren was right team, wrong time. Is that a fair assessment?
I don't know if it's fair. It's definitely an assessment because when I joined, there was a lot of changes which had not been asked or signed or orchestrated by me. Obviously, and new things, a lot of things changed, and I had to deal with obviously a lack of maturity of the powertrain and a lot of things, but still it was, one of the best experiences in my life, if not the best one.
Since 2018, what have you been up to? We've had French Grand Prix, obviously, but I've got a whole list of things on this bit of paper in front of me. You've gone back into driver management. Tell us about Adrien David.
Adrien is a young driver, obviously, which came to find me to ask a little bit of advice. So I will not say I'm back in driver management, but more in driver support, let's say, or driver development. Talented young kid, obviously very young. He's been the Formula 4 champion last year, French Formula 4 champion last year, sorry, and the youngest champion ever in the Formula 4 series. He's now in Formula Renault, being one of the Renault F1 Academy driver. So obviously not only me sees a lot of potential in him, and he's now going through his learning curve,
One of the most exciting young French drivers, would you say?
Yeah, but of course I have to say this. But no, it's you have to see. The drivers you can see if he has some potential early days, but you need to see how then he's going through the lab and how he develop himself. And you need to give him a few years, especially when he starts so young.
That's an interesting thing, isn't it? What's happened within French motorsport for there to be quite so many young, talented French drivers coming through? Because we're going through a bit of a golden age now.
Yeah, I think it's always, it's a cycle, part of a time period. So go-kart racing school, good professional in karting who can teach the kids how to race well. We first started with a federation which is actively, supporting the youngsters to practice, which is important. Then it's a good step to have this Formula 4 series, which is a federal series. So I think this is a cheaper series you can find in Europe, but it still gives you a lot of experience and exposure. And the fact, then you have teams like DAMS or ART. They are very good in teaching drivers how to deliver, and that's why they have been so successful in these last years. And don't forget Renault, obviously, having some reference in Formula 1 as a team, as an engine manufacturer, supporting driver, having an academy. So it's all this puzzles, when it's all together, you pick up the young talent, you create the interest for the youngsters to come in, and then they can find a path to go there, So this is still very active, in France, yeah.
Now, another thing I know you're involved with, when I say Morand, have I pronounced that correctly?
Yeah. Well, be careful with how you say it, obviously.
Or is it Morand, maybe?
Yeah, Morand,
But
yeah.
it's a hypercar, which is, I think, based in Switzerland. Tell us a little bit about it and whether we're going to see it at Le Mans. Is that the aim?
No, the aim is to create, a new hypercar company. First of all, we have developed, running through this process, we have developed a new technology which we are now patenting to have a smaller, higher energy storage pack. And this is a technology we would like to obviously also maybe commercialize through other applications in the future. And then, yes, we are trying to build up this project to run, on a very exclusive supercar, hypercar, with my partner being based in Switzerland, in the Fribourg canton, having this fiber bodyworks, which makes the car more ecological or ecologically friendly, and working obviously on a two kind, which is a full electric car or a hybrid car, but it's a road car. It's not a racing car at all. We definitely want to develop, let's say, a small exclusive Swiss manufacturer.
And can you tell us what's under the bonnet other than the energy storage? How many horsepower are we talking?
Well, we are talking about 1,000 horsepower for the hybrid version and maybe 1,500 for the full electric one.
Oh, wow. 1,500 horsepower.
Yeah. Performance-wise, it's obviously, we have hired people with F1 and Le Mans experience with us, so we are also very driven by racing and technology. But we wanted both our cars to have a range of around 300 kilometers, 305 to be honest. This is the target, which is the length of a Formula One Grand Prix. We wanted the cars to have hypercar performance, so it's like 0 to 200 kph in less than 6.2 seconds. Top speed, we don't know yet. The aerodynamic will tell us, but we know it's going to be above 380. So it's a hypercar, but a car which you can drive every day, or you could drive every day, but you can also drive it through cities, if you have to drop your kid at school and then go and have fun, But it's trying to make, in this world coming up, people who love cars and love driving sometimes, their cars, high-performance car. There will still be people like this who will to have this, So to make something very exclusive where you just enjoy driving your car.
Now, if you were still attending every race for McLaren, let's say, or Lotus, Renault, would you have stumbled across this program? Would you have had time to do it? Or is this an example of, life outside the Formula One paddock?
Yeah, I think it's more life outside paddock. If you have to commit to, let's say, the team principal role in F1 team, you would have enough time to do anything else because you have to be committed. 22, like I said, 23 races. It's taking a lot of our time and our life, so it's difficult to commit. But trying to help anyway, and you can still, advise, you can still guide, you can still be connected and still help the company to develop with obviously contacts and other ideas.
It sounds fantastic. So, Eric, just in conclusion, are we ever going to see you back working in a Formula One team? Or is that period of your life done now?
You can't never say what's going to be tomorrow, But today I'm busy enough, to be honest, with where I am and what I'm doing. So just can keep pushing, what I'm doing, and I want to make it a success,
Well, Eric, best of luck with that. Hope to see you at the Riviera, on the Riviera, should I say, next year with the French Grand Prix. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you, Tom.
Will we see Eric working in a Formula One team again? Maybe, although he seems happy with his lot on the French Riviera. I particularly love Eric's recollections of his days at Renault and Lotus. There was the despair surrounding Robert Kubica's rally crash in 2011, followed by life with Kimi and Romain Grosjean at Lotus. And I thought it was really interesting that he played down the team's financial woes of the time. And what about those 4 years at McLaren under the tutelage of Ron Dennis, and with Jenson and Fernando as the drivers, two great champions? And there's no doubt that Eric's got a fascinating book in him, as he clearly wasn't quite ready to open up completely about those experiences. Eric, many thanks for your time. It was great to catch up. Now, as ever, let's have a quick look through the virtual mailbag to see what you guys have been saying about the show. And you appear to have really enjoyed last week's podcast with safety car driver Bernd Maylander. Joachim Franosch got in touch to say this: wonderful podcast with Bernd. So great to hear from all sides of the sport. Right from the beginning of the episode, I wondered if I might have been able to apply for that position. But hearing that he simply got asked out of the blue makes the whole story so much better. Yes, Joachim, it appears to have been right place, right time for Bernd. But don't forget that he was a very quick driver in his own right and deserved that phone call from Charlie Whiting. And gallantly said, a key reason why Beyond the Grid is in a class of its own among all the Formula One podcasts, crikey, thanks gallantly, is that it connects us with the unsung heroes of Formula One. The safety car is arguably the most prominent, yet mysterious car in the Formula One paddock. So thanks, Tom, for the amazing story of Bernd Maylander. Well, thanks for listening gallantly, and any car and driver combination that's led more than 700 laps yet hasn't won a race definitely has an air of mystery about it. And finally, let's go to mjoel82, who says, this was one of my favourite episodes yet, and being a Formula One fan in America, it is such a pleasure to learn more about the inner workings of the greatest sport in the world. Keep up the great work. Well, thanks, mjoel82, and glad you enjoyed the show, and equally glad that you think F1 is the greatest sport in the world. We couldn't agree more, and we're delighted to bring you these stories. Thank you. And if you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Or better still, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. And don't forget that if you'd like to hear your message read out on the show, you can drop us a line on Twitter. I'm at Tom Clarkson F1, or you can use the hashtag F1 Beyond the Grid. We love to hear where you're listening and what you're doing at the time. So thanks for listening. Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 in association with Audio Boom. Until next time, keep it flat out.